nothing to worry about.
She just goes a little mad sometimes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
It's time for Ben's Horror Bullshit.
Yeah, it's words about books, Ben. This week we're talking about Hellraiser the movie. A very odd name for a book, but, you know, we made it happen.
Yeah?
I'm Nate, you're Ben, and we projected light onto a screen, and we read it with our eyes and our minds.
And if you want to hear us doing that in the moment, and if you have your own copy of Hellraiser, you can watch along with us. Check out our YouTube channel. Link is in the description or whatever where you're listening to this. Go to the YouTube. We did a riff tracks. You can set up your own copy and watch along with us. It was interesting.
A trip?
Yeah. So when we talked about the Hellbound Heart, which you also should probably listen to if you want to get the most out of this episode, we're going to be referencing
Check it out
frequently.
Twice. At least twice. Get those downloads up.
We're going to get those brand deals. Believe it or not, Cinnabon didn't actually pay for those jokes.
But they could in the future.
But they could in the future. I'm sure they were really happy with the way we handled that. So the Hellbound Heart, the reason we watched Hellraiser is because we read the story that inspired it. And I mentioned that it is really tough to talk about the Hellbound Heart without talking about the massive influence that the Hellraiser movies and comics and all that stuff have had on the perception of the Cenobites. I mean, on the cover of my copy of the book, there is a picture of a skull with a bunch of pins in it. I actually used that for the YouTube version of the podcast. And Pinhead is barely featured in the book at all, but he's like the main Cenobite in the movies. So that's the degree to which this has influenced it. And when Clive Barker was writing it, he was writing it with a view towards getting into directing. He wanted to make the Hellbound Heart movie.
Oh.
Now, one thing that became pretty apparent as the movie went on.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be that book snob, Ben, and say that the book was better.
One thing that became increasingly apparent as the movie went on is that I had forgotten some things. So I do think what the movie gives us that the book doesn't. I still think the movie is more focused on the Cenobites. And I started looking into things in anticipation of this episode because as soon as I saw the movie, I was like, there was a few things that didn't add up. I did hear that Clive Barker had problems with the studios almost from the get-go. This was at the time when Britain was doing the video nasties, and there's a million other movie podcasts that could go into this way better than I can, but Britain was heavily censoring stuff. They called them video nasties. They banned a bunch of horror movies. America was still getting, it was having like a moralist backlash to the 60s and 70s. So censorship was high, and he was doing a lot of anti-religious or just blasphemous stuff with the Jesus imagery and the gore. And he was pushed by Hollywood to, or I don't even think he made it in Hollywood. I don't know. It was filmed in London. He
made a video game.
Yes, he famously made a video game. We'll talk about Clive Barker's later years, but point is that there was some studio interference. I don't know to what extent, but I do know he was pushed towards a more traditional Hollywood style. So if I had to venture a guess, the things that Clive Barker was maybe talked into doing somewhat against his will, giving Kirsty that stupid boyfriend.
What? You didn't think... I want to say Sean. Damn it. Damn it. You didn't think David was an essential part of the story?
I don't even know what he was to her.
he was a guy who would make out with her in what I want to say is a subway tunnel, Ben.
Yeah. So they gave Kirsty a little boyfriend so that he could come in at the end and like not save her.
That was weird for me because in the first film he was written as far more helpful, and there was an ad-lib moment where the engineer comes through the hall at the end, and it's like, oh no, and I have to fight him, and the boyfriend wants to participate, and I was like, no, piss off, like I'm good. And they were laughing. I didn't know I did it except in the moment, and they realized that Kirsty didn't really need a boyfriend to get through. Like, I was doing it fine.
They thought it weakened the character to have a boyfriend.
No, originally they had more of a boyfriend, but when I started playing it, I was like, I got this. Like, too little, too late, dude. I'm good.
But they, like there are some
okay.
There are several scenes in the movie that obviously don't fit with the rest of the movie at all. And they're mostly
his name was Steve.
His name was Steve?
I looked it up just now. I'm like, David, are we sure about it's Steve. It says Kirsty's boyfriend Steve.
Okay. That's how important that guy was. I don't even know where I got David. So my point is, they try to turn Kirsty into a kind of generic final girl, as if Hellraiser was a slasher movie.
Well, they also made the Cenobites the primary antagonist, even though in the book it was clearly Frank.
Yeah. So there's some studio weirdness going on. I don't think Clive Barker got to make exactly the movie he wanted to make, but he was happy enough with it to direct Hellraiser 2, Hellbound. We didn't watch that for this, but maybe next year. The one thing that the movie really does that the book doesn't is it nails the look and feel of the Cenobites. In the book, they are these kind of ambiguous characters. They're definitely described as being into, BDSM and torture and all this stuff, and that they chase pleasure in pain. And the way in the movie Frank talks about what he's going to get from the Cenobites is very different from the book.
Oh, yeah.
In the book, he seems to think he is going to some kind of like super depraved orgy. That's what I think he thinks he's getting.
The orgy dimension, baby.
Yeah, and what he actually gets instead is like tortured to death over and over and over again.
Which is the Cenobite version of an orgy. That was on Frank for not figuring that stuff out beforehand. Idiot.
But in the movie, Frank says that the puzzle box can open doors to heaven or hell, and he didn't care which. And he also says that the Cenobites blur the line between pain and pleasure. It almost seems like Frank maybe got a little bit of what he wanted, but then found out he wasn't quite up to the task.
Yeah, Frank. You're not all that. You're not special. You're garbage, Frank. You're garbage.
It's focusing on like maybe the first act. What were the major differences that you noticed? What are some scenes and
Frank,
such that really...
Frank wears pants when he gets down and dirty with the ladies. That's his
Frank
thing.
always wears pants in every sex scene.
Pants.
And I wonder if that was Hollywood interference, but they do almost show his dong at one point when he's just like sitting on the bed. So I gotta think like that was a choice to have him wearing pants while he was going to town.
Or maybe they only could have one dong scene, so he had to figure out like what scene do I want the almost dong to appear in. The bed scene, that'll get him. It also it takes out the part where Frank jerks off in his room.
Yeah, well, you knew they were gonna have to take that out.
I'm okay with that. It's a little strange that...
I didn't want to see it.
I mean, if it happened, Yeah, no. So Kirsty is the daughter. We talked about that. She's the daughter of not Rory. I want to say Larry.
Larry. It was Larry.
Okay.
I remember that.
Okay, so Larry instead of Rory. And Julia is the stepmom who... So in the book, they have some interaction. In this, Julia only seems to communicate to Kirsty through menacing stares.
It was strange. It is definitely not the sort of... There's a quality to like older horror movies that I absolutely love, because I'm doing my 31 movies for 31 Days of October, and I just watched the House by the Cemetery, which is a Lucio Fulci Giallo movie, and it awful. Makes absolutely no sense. It is. I was constantly just laughing and screaming, "What?" And there's a little bit of that vibe to Hellraiser of like, they didn't just focus test the shit out of everything back then. Like, you got away with a lot of weird shit. Like having absolutely no dialogue between Kirsty and Julia until the
Kirsty's
very end.
Kirsty is like asking her for a towel or something, and Julia just stands there on the landing, staring at her.
Julia puts her chin in the air and looks directly down her nose from several stairs above Kirsty. And it's like, that communicates in subtle cinematic language that they have a strained relationship.
Also, Kirsty kisses her dad directly on the mouth.
So let's talk about the movers. Let's talk about the movers.
Oh, God. Do we have to? The movers are gross and weird. And
so we're watching this movie.
I feel like you should be calling their manager.
It was me, Nate, and my wife watching this movie. And we see the movers. And Frank's talking to him like they might be buds. They're helping him move a mattress. Like, when I've worked with movers, in the past, they usually have insurance and I'm not allowed to help them move anything.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm paying you to move, so, like, you do it.
But these guys, they're helping Larry move a mattress, and he's talking to him kind of like they're friends. And so we're like, are these his friends, or who are these guys? They
asked for beer.
They asked for beer, and we're like, oh, well, they must be friends. And then they hit on his daughter. And we're like, oh.
They hit on his wife, then they hit on his daughter.
And it's like, oh, I hope they're not his friends.
and then they go, she has her mom's looks. And he's like, her mom is dead.
That your daughter?
Uh-huh.
Got her mother's looks.
Her mother's dead.
Oh.
It's like, yeah, I really hope they're not friends now.
Yeah, they gotta be movers, right? Yeah. And then that transitions directly into Julia's walking around the house, and she finds these pictures of Frank and like a prostitute or something. And she why he took those pictures and kept them, I don't know. But
who took the pictures too?
Yeah, that's the thing. Somebody took them.
Somebody had to have been in that room with him.
I mean, Clive Barker took them, but maybe he's just good friends with Clive Barker. This is semi-autobiographical. I don't know. We didn't talk about this in the Hellbound Heart episode, but Clive Barker is actually a gay man. He's married to a man.
Oh my God. Does he also wear pants every time?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him at the next horror convention. Julia finds these pictures, and she starts having this flashback to her having sex with Frank, and you can tell it's in the past because they gave her little hair extensions.
Oh, is that how I'm supposed to know?
Her hair is different. Even though the actress playing her looks very old. I don't know. She was 30, we figured out at the time. Yeah, but I was like, wow.
I felt really bad saying that, but she definitely looks older than 30.
And maybe that's because I don't know. I'm in my mid 30s, so I'm like, well, surely I don't look that old. Surely, but maybe I do. Maybe this is just deep denial for me. But yeah, she's flashing back to this time she had sex with Frank, and every time Frank thrusts, they push the mattress. They're trying to get the mattress around. The movers and Larry are trying to get the mattress around a corner. And so every time Frank thrusts, it cuts back to the mattress. And then there's a nail on the wall, and that's how Rory Larry cuts his hand this time.
Also, this is where we establish Frank always keeps a switchblade on him, apparently. So that'll come up later. Also, he kisses her directly, just engulfs her chin in his mouth.
Oh, he sucks her chin, yeah.
Nobody knows how to kiss in this movie. It all seems just like bleh.
They just open their mouths slightly and rub their mouths on each other.
It was the 80s. It was the style at the time.
Like, they kiss without moving their lips. That's the weird thing. Like, they just rub, like, teeth and gums.
And then he cuts away her dress, but only, like, one of the two arms of the dress. So the dress is still held up. But yeah. I guess use your imagination, mate? I don't know.
Well, they do nudity. I'm sure this was like a carefully negotiated thing of like exactly how many minutes of nudity are you allowed to have.
Oh, I'm sure. That's, again, it's the dong scene, Ben. You only have one dong scene, so you have to make the best use of it that you can.
One of the things that surprised me a little bit about the novel was how light on description it was, because I'd seen this movie before, and I know like he spent a lot of time with like makeup people trying to get the Cenobites right. He gave them a lot of notes, and I know he wanted to do like sex and gore. He wanted to make you uncomfortable. The vibe he was chasing was, I'm both repulsed and attracted to this, and that makes me deeply uncomfortable.
Well, he got half of it right.
Which half?
I don't want to say.
So, it's very visual. Like the Hellraiser franchise is like very aesthetic, and the book was just so light on any of that. It's just such a weird dichotomy because like, had the book been a little more vividly descriptive, I would have liked it more. And I think that's a lot of what I was missing was like the descriptions of the Cenobites. Like,
you really needed a description of the house, how it was just like falling apart and gross. And clearly her victims were being lured into a murder room for murder.
Well, and then he added in the movie all this religious iconography. Like apparently their mother had a lot of like Catholic Jesus stuff. Like she's got a big old Jesus statue in the closet. She's got a bunch of statues of the saints. She's got a light up Jesus thing.
How do you know that wasn't Frank's, Ben?
I'm pretty sure that wasn't Frank's. I know, who am I to deny Frank's personal relationship with the Lord? It's just...
Yeah, he has a personal relationship with the Lord. He gets into bed with his Jesus statue. He pulls his pants all the way up.
Yep. If Frank's talking to Jesus, Jesus is telling him something other than what he's telling me. So, and it moves really fast in the movie. I forgot how quick it all was. Because Frank is there like right from the get-go. He reanimates. They totally dispense with the scene where Julia goes to the Cenobite dimension and sees him. They jump right into Rory bleeds on the floor and Frank is back in the flesh.
And gross.
And he's really gross. Now,
and he probably smells like a sewer.
Some of the special effects work better than others. Whenever they have Frank sliding around in that little suit, that was actually creepy. Whoever they put in the suit and had him like move without moving his legs and like shuffle really fast, that actually looked kind of creepy to me. When they start getting into the stop motion effects, the frame rate just tanks.
The best was when the CGI lightning shot out at the end and it looked like an old-fashioned Dairy Queen commercial. That was my favorite.
CGI lightning.
I was like, oh, hot eats, cool treats? Hell yeah, let's go.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say now we'll have to turn to Gravy Man Jamie to confirm this, but I don't think a computer entered into any part of that. I think they actually drew that lightning on the film. I think that's animation.
You think
I'm
so?
serious. Yeah.
You're probably
that's
right.
Like the Ghostbusters effects were like animation, I think.
Ghostbuster effect looked a lot better. Like,
they spent a lot more time on it, for sure.
Better.
Yeah. All the money went into the practical effects. All the money went into the Cenobite costumes, the Frank costume, the Frank prosthetics. And Frank looked good. I will say, Zombie Frank looked good. You're very silent. Do you disagree?
No, I agree. I don't know what else I could add to that. No, I think Frank looked really good.
The one time, anytime, you interrupt me all the time, right?
What?
You can go ahead.
I disagree, Ben.
You can go ahead to interrupt me to tell me when I'm right. Like, you could be like, yeah, Ben, you're making really good points. You can say that as much as you want. But no.
I agree.
So what do you think about the portrayal of Larry Rory?
Oh, man. So the book, I feel like the relationship between Julia and Rory was kind of like front and center. And Julia, at least for most of the book, was almost like the main character. And in this movie, it's definitely Kirsty. You know that Larry and Julia have kind of a strained relationship, but I think they only have, like 2 scenes, maybe 3 scenes together. And it's pretty lacking. So Rory was like mid, and Larry is just like not even there. He's not even existing.
Yeah, Larry... It was interesting because there's a couple of fights missing that are there in the book to highlight that Larry is aware that Julia is becoming increasingly distant and dissatisfied with the marriage.
He is completely not aware in this.
No, he really doesn't. He doesn't get it. He's painted as more of a jerk in this, I actually think. Like, he seems totally blind. Like, Julia seems depressed and angry, and she doesn't want to live in this house. And every time Julia starts to maybe express a problem, Larry ignores her or is frustrated by her. Whereas in the book, Rory kind of seizes on any opportunity to try to fix what's wrong with Julia. He would love for Julia to like him again. So I thought that was an interesting choice. And it's weird because in a way, I feel like they want to paint Julia as more of a villain in the movie.
Yeah, because she keeps striking villainous poses.
Yeah, she's always got the villain pose. Julia is really inconsistent in the movie compared to the book. In the movie, she has these scenes, and I actually watched an interview with the actress where she said that she was going for a portrayal of the murder scenes of Julia kind of enjoying it. And she even told a story, and these are like her exact words.
I think the women will have a lot of sympathy. I'm not so sure about the men. I mean, the reaction I've had from people on set, for instance, after they'd seen the rushes of the killings, I mean, nobody would speak to me. But it was because a woman was doing it, basically. And I think all the women in the audience would be going, absolutely, yes. The men might be locking up the tool sheds.
That was her angle, was that she loved how uncomfortable her scenes made the men on the set. And how like empowering.
They were evaluating, like, maybe I should start wearing pants to the bedroom. Maybe that's what I need to do.
She said she thought her portrayal was going to make women go, hell yeah, and men go, I should probably lock the weapons in the shed. And she wanted that like empowerment angle, was that Julia wanted good sex and she was willing to kill for it.
Empowerment through murder?
Feminist icon.
Oh man, I've never heard this being cited as a feminist empowerment film.
No. On one hand, I think she's maybe reaching a smidge, but it was said kind of tongue in cheek. And as an actress, she has to find something to relate to in Julia. So I think that was the angle she took, was that Julia is repressed and ignored by this ignorant man that she is, financially tied to now. And she just wants somebody who can please her. And that's the other weird thing about the Rory or Larry Julia sex stuff, is like there's a scene, the landing scene, where Frank moves in the book. And Rory hears it, and he goes up to investigate.
And in this book, he's shouting, "No!" and he's pounding on the walls.
No, you know what he's doing? He's crucifying rats. That's part of the pounding. He's hammering nails into these rats, which is a great, like, gore horror moment where you see these rats nailed to a wall, because that's fucking terrifying. So, like, we're getting, not only is Frank, like, a zombie, he's also, like, got a broken brain. But in the book, to keep Rory from finding Frank, Julia pretends to be into having sex with him. In the movie, Julia is very aware that Frank wants to kill Larry in this moment. And Larry thinks she wants to get busy, and he's like...
Meanwhile, Frank is stealthily... He put all of his points in stealth, because he's just a zombie man creeping out of the closet, slowly walking towards him.
So Frank also... It cannot be understated how important this is. Frank looks cool, even as a zombie. He's got this awesome suit, and they even do the suit up with a little gore. They even make it look like a horror suit. He looks like the devil. He looks like Satan came to Earth. Like, this is like how Satan would dress himself and what he would wear. He looks cool and creepy. And he's walking up like he's going to stab Rory with his trademark switchblade. And Julia's shouting, "No, no, no, don't do it. Stop. No, stop." And meanwhile, Larry is on top of her, fumbling around. And
seemingly unaware of everything.
we were talking about this, like, we were talking through the whole scene in the riff tracks. We're like, what? It's really uncomfortable, because what Rory must think is happening is Julia is telling him, "Stop groping me." And what she's actually saying is, "No, don't murder him while he's on top of me." And he's not aware of either of those situations, or he's pretending not to be aware. And then eventually, finally, after like,
after Frank leaves the room, and maybe he leaves the house to go get a pack of smokes, and it's like 20 minutes later, and then Larry's like, "Oh, that's weird. You girls are all so weird."
Oh, did you say
Bye.
no 47 times? I guess that means no. And it might actually be like 40 times. She's just saying no on repeat for like 2 minutes. It's very uncomfortable. And Larry sits up, and he's like, "I still get you. 1 minute you're all over me, and the next minute you don't want to have sex with me. What are you doing? Is that even allowed?" And then he goes away. he And, I'm making fun, but like he does kind of say the whole thing in a falsetto. It's just a strange scene. And in the book, what happens instead is Julia has sex with Rory, and she doesn't want to, but she's consenting simply because it will get suspicion off of her. And she at first pretends like she's distancing herself from her body. She starts thinking about how her body is just like, it's not just sexy, it's also like phlegm and bile and feces and like all this other disgusting stuff that's inside the human body. And then she catches Frank watching from the closet, and she kind of like puts on a show for him. Like it's a whole different tone in the book. In the book, it highlights how weird Frank and Julia are. And I say weird, that's probably the wrong word. How like...
No, it was the 80s. They're weird.
Well, it's like they're voyeuristic. They're very kinky. Like that's the thing. They're very kinky.
Yeah, they are.
And in the book or in the movie, it's just like, now I'm guessing again, maybe there's like you already had all the sex. We let you show that stupid porcelain doll with the genitalia. You've had all the sex you can get for a rated R movie. And maybe they had to cut it off. I don't know. But in the movie, Frank comes off less sexually deviant and more murderous and macho and in your face.
Yeah. And also, like, he is not at all related to Larry, and that they don't look anything alike.
No, Larry looks like... They look like they're from totally different ethnic backgrounds.
Yes.
Almost. Like...
I don't know. I guess my brother doesn't look much like me. He has jet black hair, brown eyes, and tan skin, so...
Yeah, my sister's blonde.
Oh my god. So she's like the good sibling.
Yeah, she dyed her hair red.
What?
Yeah, just this September she dyed her hair red.
Oh my god.
I mean, it looks good, but I was just like, why? She's like, I want to feel like part of this family.
You could have escaped.
Yeah, it was like, but you didn't have to be part of it. My sister can tan, Nathaniel. She has melanin.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Why would you try to get back into the family,
why do you want
right?
this? Why do you want this? So it's a tone shift, and it kind of, the human relationships are way less complex in the movie. Rory is just some dumb dad. He's the dumb dad in every commercial and every stupid sitcom. He's just a clueless moron. Julia is more or less unchanged. She's maybe a little bit more into the murder. And I don't know if that's a direction choice or an acting choice.
Why not both?
Could be. I mean, my reading of Julia in the book was that she was slightly more hesitant. Like, she mostly wanted Frank back, and she didn't really care what she had to do to get it. But in the movie, she leans all the way in. She starts liking the murder for the murder itself. I think she feels powerful. And Kirsty is generic final girl. She's just a teenager working a part-time job and going to school and taking long walks that don't connect to other scenes.
Yeah, that happened a lot. Do we want to talk about the homeless man, or do we want to wait until the end, Ben?
Yeah, there's a homeless man, and it was funny because my wife and I have both seen the movie before. And I was like, I can't remember what the hell this homeless man's deal is. He's always watching Kirsty. And my wife's like, I don't think it connects to anything. I think it's just like a weird thing that they never bring up again. Neither of us remembered the thing at the end at all. I don't know what the fuck that was. So I guess let's talk about Kirsty in the book. Again, for those who aren't familiar, in the book, Kirsty is not the daughter. She is an adult friend of the husband, who is named Rory. That's why we keep saying that. And Rory asks Kirsty to talk to Julia because they're both girls, even though they hate each other.
Yeah.
So in the book,
sounds like a solid
Kirsty,
plan. I don't know why you're saying it like that. It's weird or dumb, Ben.
In the book, Kirsty goes to try to talk to Julia, and that's how she finds out Julia is like having an affair, she thinks.
Yeah.
In the movie, and this actually works a little better in the movie.
Hey, you need to make nice with her. I know that all of her interactions since you came to this house are her staring down at you from the upper landing like some sort of supervillain or something. But I really need you guys to get along so that, I don't know, I'm dumb. So go do that. Bye.
So Kirsty's like, okay, I'll try. I'll try to reach out to Julia. And she just happens to go visit Julia while Julia is dragging another gentleman back, luring him with the promise of sex. We didn't really cover that, but that's how Julia needs to restore
the fact
Frank.
That she kills with a hammer in this one instead of a knife.
That really bothered you.
Yeah. Really wish she would have just used a knife, but okay.
So the plot of Hellraiser, if you're unaware and you've made it, 40 minutes into this episode, is that Frank comes back as a zombie creature and he needs to take human lives to rebuild his body. Julia is providing those human lives in the form of clueless married men that she is seducing back to her house and then taking them in the movie to what is very obviously a kill room. It looks like the creepiest haunted house you've ever been to. And all these dudes are just like, yeah, I'll get naked. And every single one of them is a middle-aged, balding man who no one would ever want to see naked.
One of them has just a weird patch of hair front and center, and everything else is like bald down the middle. It's very odd. I don't know why he went with that choice. And the bar they're going to looks like it was in the middle of someone's house. So
yeah, it's got a staircase in the middle of it that looks like it goes. I said maybe a food court. It looked like it could be an escalator. I don't know. But they go to that bar and she lures him back and she kills him. So Kirsty sees one of these guys go up and she hears him scream. And she knows it's not just an affair. It's a murder. And Kirsty runs in there like, what are you going to do? Somebody's being murdered, Kirsty. Like, but that's even more true in the book.
Go get him.
So she goes in to go get him, and the guy comes out, and Frank's busy draining the life out of him. And he comes out, he's all mummified and gross, and they get another special effects makeup scene, which cool. I liked it.
And he tries to stick his finger directly in her mouth because that's a thing.
There's a lot of that.
Please stop.
There's a lot of that. So Frank tries to put his finger in her mouth, and then later on, one of the Cenobites just sticks two fingers all the way in her mouth. And you're like, is that sexy? Is that like... Is that a thing people do?
Do you not, Ben? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Let me tell you, the evidence that I do not do that is I still have all my fingers. Because I gotta imagine... I cannot imagine any woman I've ever been with being cool with that. That is fucking weird. Because it's like a weird, like aggressive thing they do. And it's yeah, very distracting. So in the book, Frank likes to say this thing. Now again, keep in mind, in the book, Kirsty is an adult woman not related to him. He says, "Come to daddy," because that's a thing he likes to use on the girls. They all love that.
Before he pulls his pants up.
I like to imagine he's just got to put on like fishing gear, you know, his waders. In the movie, he still says "come to daddy." He says it a lot more, which actually it's creepy and off-putting. Well, it's creepy and off-putting, but he's creepy and off-putting. So like there's certain things that like when a villain says it, it's like, yeah, well, a villain would talk that way. Like in the movie, he says it a lot, and that helps to establish it as like a catchphrase. And also because in the movie, Kirsty is Larry's daughter, as she calls him daddy. They also establish that, which I still think is weird. You reach a certain age, you just got to stop doing that.
Well, they kiss each other directly on the mouth, so, you know.
Yeah, they do.
They have a special
That's
relationship.
Maybe they're European. I don't know.
We weren't sure because those two speak in an American accent and most everyone else speaks in an English accent.
It was filmed in Britain. I know that.
Yes.
So,
but it takes place
I'm guessing
in eastern United States.
We have no idea where it takes place.
That was according
Or did you
to
look
the
it up?
wiki. Yeah, I looked it up.
Yeah, because like all the background actors are British, and so it makes no sense. They're like, I'll tell you right now, I've been all over the country. There is nowhere in America where we have like a huge British population
You've
all
never
in the
been
same
to
place.
the Midwest.
I've flown over it like everyone else does. I've been to Chicago.
That hardly counts. That's like as far east as you can go, while still technically being in the Midwest.
Oh my god. What's west of Chicago? It's just like the states no one lives in.
Yeah.
Colorado, Wyoming.
Colorado's not
Dakotas.
part of the Midwest, and neither is Wyoming, you son of a bitch.
What are they part of?
They're part of the mountain zone, Ben. The Rockies, whatever you want to call that area.
Well, I know they're part of the Rockies, but I didn't know that was like its own zone.
Yes, Ben.
I didn't know there were enough people there to qualify as a zone.
Colorado.
Like, you know how the Australian outback is just all one thing because it's uninhabitable?
There's a decent chunk of people in Colorado.
In Denver?
Yeah.
And nowhere else.
Can you really make that argument about Pennsylvania, though?
There are exactly 3 places in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, 3 places, Ben.
There are 3 places in Pennsylvania where you will find people. You'll find people all over Pennsylvania. You just might not want to.
Yeah.
There is Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and the rest is Pennsylvania.
Gross, first of all.
It is objectively gross.
Just that name is gross. Pennsylvania.
It's intended to warn you away. But anyway,
man.
I don't even remember where we were.
Yeah,
I think we were talking about people putting fingers in Kirsty's mouth.
Oh yeah, she fights Frank. That's where we're at.
Yeah, so she fights Frank. And that goes pretty much as it went in the book. She stumbles across the puzzle box in the attic or whatever, and that stops Frank in his tracks. And they have "you want this?" He's like, "I want it." "And you really want this?" "Well," and then she drops an F-bomb. "Well, fuck you, man." And she chucks it out the window. And she runs out, and he goes, "No!" I think I made the joke that he was, up there killing Padme. Because he just shouts no. He doesn't shout like, "Julia, run outside and go get that box." Or he doesn't just like put on a hat and run outside and go get that box.
Yeah, he could have. He could have done anything other than what he did. And it would have been a better position.
Like Photoshop Frank under like Luffy's straw hat from One Piece. And he's like, that's all you need. You could totally get away with that disguise.
So Kirsty arrives into a hospital, and she wakes up, and the nurse is just watching TV in there, and the TV is of a flower blooming for some reason. And then the nurse is like, "Oh, good, you're awake. I'll go get the doctor." And then the doctor comes in, and he pulls the puzzle box out of his pocket, and is like, "You know what this is?" And it's like, okay, it's weird that you have my property in your pocket. And then he's like, "Well, the police are going to want to talk to you. And maybe this will jog your memory." And you pointed out, at no point did Kirsty say she doesn't remember. And then they lock her inside. She can't leave the hospital. And he doesn't tell her anything about her medical condition. He just comes in there, gives her the puzzle box, is an asshole, and leaves.
Can we talk about how the hospital room is like a concrete cell?
Yeah,
with
it looks
one
like
desk lamp.
It looks like an asylum or something, but it's it comes off like it's supposed to be a regular medical hospital. So I don't know what they were going for there. Maybe Clive Barker's been to some freaky hospitals or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with this has access. Like I had access to a garage.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. We couldn't.
We're filming in my storage unit.
We couldn't film on scene, so we've got a basement.
Well, they couldn't.
It's the basement where the bar is upstairs and the hospital's downstairs. So we're gonna use that.
I'm guessing it was filmed in a studio, so they built this hospital set. But they built it kind of cheap because it needs to come apart, because this is where she gets sucked into the hell dimension, the Cenobite dimension. So they have this whole thing where the walls pull apart. And so she gets sucked into hell. And this is where she encounters what the movies call the engineer. So I'm double checking this before I say it. Yep, that's the engineer. Okay.
We had to double check because it's so different from the portrayal in the book. One has to wonder, where and when did this creepy thing manage to go to Cenobite College, right?
So in the book, and this is way better and way more interesting, the engineer is portrayed as a cone of light that seems to possess human bodies and exists in a reality somewhat between our own. And he also seems to make sure that the puzzle box winds up going to the next person. And in this, he's a weird upside down slug man.
And he
obviously
chases
being
you on
pushed on a cart that is often visible in some of the lightning strikes. It's not one of the better effects in the movie. It really sucks when, at least to me, this is an unpopular opinion. People are going to yell at me for this, but when you juxtapose the engineer with Pinhead and the rest of the Cenobites, which they do in this scene, like the engineer chases Kirsty for a bit. Makes no sense. Why is he chasing her? What is he doing?
Right.
Why does he stop chasing her? He chases her back into this room. Like a hallway opens up. She goes into it. The engineer comes out. He chases her back out of the hallway, back into the room that she was already in. And then the Cenobites are standing there waiting for her. And the Cenobites look so fucking cool. Like they look so good. That's the Cenobites aesthetic is the only reason Hellraiser kept getting movie after movie after movie. They look so fucking cool. And the engineer does not.
Fucking lame.
It's kind of lame. And like I know somebody worked really hard on it, and I love practical effects and puppets, and I wish they would make more of a comeback. But like that one was just like way too ambitious. They did not have what they needed to make that work. That is not a Jim Henson monster masterpiece. That is, we ran out of time and or money. Here's a shopping cart I stole from Walmart.
We couldn't just have a lame cone of light, Ben. Come on. So when you think of an engineer, you obviously think of some sort of two-headed slug monstrosity thing, right? Exactly. Put it in the film.
They don't even mention the engineer in the film. I pulled this all from the wiki.
Yes, they do not mention the engineer.
Now, the thing is, and we talked about this, and this is one thing I forgot, because like, while I said in the episode we did about the book that I felt like the movie was much more interested in developing the lore of the Cenobites, I headcanoned that a little bit. Because while the movie does develop the aesthetic of the Cenobites, and it does a little bit more to make their mission, like Pinhead says, they're explorers in the further regions of experience, angels to some, demons to others. None of that's in the book. None of Pinhead's speeches are in the book, and his speeches are so fucking cool.
Oh, that's so cool!
Like, he's just so cool.
Oh my god, did you know the engineer was going to be in the second movie, but they just cut it?
He was not. The second movie is when he got out, kind of. That and, what's the other one the other movie he did that they kind of butchered? The Night something. Oh, hang on.
What, was the engineer also in that, Ben?
No, Nightbreed. That was the other one.
Nightbreeder sounds a little not as good.
Nightbreed was a movie he wanted to do that they edited to shit. And then finally, like years later, there was a re-release of like the proper cut. And it was one of those where like there's a vast difference in like quality from some of the footage because they were pulling from like copies that weren't in very good condition. Nightbreed was a movie. This is very simplified, but it's basically a movie about monsters who are persecuted by normal people and normal religion.
Are you playing the opening music from Undertale as you talk, Ben? Because I feel like you should.
I can do that, yes. Well, and in many ways, it probably did inspire that sort of thing. But the studio wound up telling Clive Barker that I don't like this because I think it's not working because I feel like I should be rooting for the monsters.
Yeah.
And Clive Barker was like, that's...
Yeah,
the whole point.
Did you not think that before? Is that
Clive Barker decided to try to make movies at exactly the wrong moment. Now, maybe I say that, but like maybe he's part of the reason we can have the kind of movies we have now is because he did that. He walked so that we could run, but he was constantly interested in exploring the humanity of monsters, the tempting and the repulsive, those dichotomies, and Hollywood just did not get it. They didn't think there was a market for it. They wanted just another slasher movie with just another final girl where the bad guy dies in the end and comes back. They just wanted another franchise. And that eventually drives Clive Barker out of directing. And another thing that Clive Barker gets a little sick of is he's kind of trapped by Hellraiser after a certain point.
Irony. We
Yeah.
have to go kill some people in Clive Barker's house in order to get him out.
As I understand it, he has done a lot of things in a lot of different genres. I think he's written a children's book, for example.
Oh
he
my
doesn't
god!
Always
So he and Ernest Cline are going to be kindred spirits.
He's a little bit better than Ernest Cline, and by a little I mean a lot. I'm kind of offended for Clive Barker.
I was going to say, what if Ernest Cline wrote a horror novel, but then I was like, oh yeah, but Ready Player One already exists, so...
Yeah, it kind of is, yeah. But yeah, he got really sick of being defined by Hellraiser, and I think he probably feels like maybe not a lot of people got it, or maybe like when he made Hellraiser, I think when he directed it, I think he was 34.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, you feel a little worse about your achievements. But he's been active the whole time, and he's like 70 now, and he just can't ever get past it. So I understand that the Scarlet Gospels were kind of like, some people viewed it as a middle finger to the fans who kept asking him to write more Hellraiser. I haven't read them yet, but I'll check it out. And if it is, I sympathize with him. Fans suck.
But we love you, fans.
Yeah, no, I don't mean you guys. You're the exception.
Yeah, if you've listened this far into this episode, you're the exception. We love
consider
you.
Consider subscribing to our Patreon. Yeah. I don't mind people that want to talk. I really don't. I'm not to say I don't like people who listen to this show, but like fandoms suck. When a whole culture springs up around something, and you get these like right opinions and wrong opinions, and you're never allowed to have a fresh take because the fandom already figured it out. Just shut up. You're not going to tell us anything new. That annoys me, but neither here nor there. So I think some of what we're seeing is studio interference, but I don't know. I couldn't find any record of him saying exactly which things were the studio and which things weren't. I did find an interview where he's talking to people from Germany and France, and they're telling him that the cut of Hellraiser 2 is like 10, 15 minutes shorter in their country, and he doesn't even know. Like, he didn't even get the say in what was censored. So that's he's struggling a bit there. And I think cutting the engineer is something along those lines, or turning him into a monster, because like the engineer in the novel is almost a little angelic, because the Cenobites are gross, and as much as I say they're cool, they look cool, but like, I don't want to have my throat cut open and have my skin peeled back with hooks. I just think it looks cool, but I don't aspire to that.
Sure. Good backpedaling. Keep going.
But no, I think it looks cool. I'm not backpedaling. It's a cool aesthetic.
Yeah, and you definitely aren't into that. Wink, wink, Ben. I gotcha. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I have piercings, but I don't even have a tattoo. Like, that's how low body mod I am.
Wow.
I'm pretty vanilla for the most part, but I like the look. But the engineer seems enigmatic and mysterious, and a little bit more.
Have that.
Yeah, it's a little bit more transcendent. It's a little bit more divine. And that's the kind of line blurring that he just was not allowed to do.
Yeah, so instead we got a monster. And then...
Well, I think so. Instead, we got a bunch of Jesus statues that weren't in the book.
Yeah.
He's like, well, if I can't blaspheme that way, then I'm going to blaspheme with stupid Jesus action figures. This is my 6-inch Jesus, and this is my quarter scale Jesus, and I'm just going to throw him in the garbage. And what do you think about that? Take that, Margaret Thatcher.
God, what a piece of shit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Twitter or TikTok or something that every day it posts, today is such and such date, Ronald Reagan's still dead. And I'm sure there's another one for Thatcher.
Oh my god.
We could talk about the ending. Let's talk about like the final little bit.
Yeah. Kirsty sees her dad, but her dad's acting a little weird, and he's just covered in blood around his scalp and ear. I mean, his ear looks like a raw piece of meat that got chewed on by the dog. He's got blood all through his hairline, and he keeps saying, "Come to daddy." It's a little weird. There's a chase, and the funny part is, in the book, she realizes, oh, they want him to confess. I gotta get him to say his name. In this, he's just like, I'm gonna kill you because I'm Frank, your uncle. Frank, who escaped from the Cenobites, who I'm really glad aren't here because I am Frank, and obviously they would be hunting Frank, who is me.
Yeah. Yeah, so this time the Cenobites get him, and they this is where I was speculating again that, like, in the book, Kirsty has a deal with them that she'll give him Frank, and they'll let her go. In the movie, they make the same deal, but then the Cenobites kind of try to renege on it, and they try to drag her to hell anyway, and in the book, they just honor the agreement. But it seems like in the movie, like, maybe the original plan was to just honor the agreement, because at one point, Pinhead says, as they're capturing Frank, go, this is not for your eyes. But then later, he's like, but nah, you should come suffer too. But, like, don't watch this. This will scar you. And so I suspect there might have been, like, a reshoot or a cut there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
In the book, she just leaves. In this, the Cenobites are like, let's go get her now, very slowly. And she uses the puzzle box to make Dairy Queen lightning fire at them to send them back to hell.
Yeah, and so they tie Frank up with
except for Butterball. The house collapsed on that fat guy, and he goes down.
Butterball's just still out there. He's just stuck under the house.
Yeah, he's still in our dimension, but he can't move. Oh yeah, and is it Sean or Steve? Steve shows up.
We decided it's Steve.
Okay,
yeah, Steve's there.
Steve showed up.
Yeah, it's because the final girl should have a final boy. Yeah. So, the other thing that made me laugh is in the book, Frank just looks into Kirsty's eyes before they tear him apart. In the movie, he looks at her, and there's this weird distorted moment where he's hanging, like, in a crucifixion shape, and he's like, Jesus wept. And then they pull him apart, and I was like, I didn't have a lot of time to talk about it because the movie is still going, but I'm like, that's a weird line there. I kept trying to think about, like, what it would mean, and I was like, so I even started to look it up. I was like, is there something I don't know about that quote? Because Jesus wept is like a Bible saying that got really popular, and I think it's popular for being the shortest verse in the Bible in a lot of translations. But what it relates to is Jesus finding out that Lazarus is dead or dying. That doesn't really apply to Frank's situation. Frank is like a Lazarus-like figure in that he came back, but now he's dying again.
Got him.
I mean, it's a good line, I guess. Like, Jesus wept sounds... It sounds like you're saying something.
How did he think to say that at that time?
I have no idea. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, that sounds like you're saying something, but the more I think about it, the more I don't think you are. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything in this context. Maybe he's saying I'll come back again, like Lazarus?
Doubt it.
Yeah, because, like, Jesus wept. I'm still puzzling over it because it's like that sounds like it meant something to someone. I don't know what. And then there's a lot of just weird imagery. There's another line, there's another quote they use at some point that's like biblical, and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And I kind of wonder if somebody added it in after the fact to try to make it like Hellraiser, like they're demons, like from the Christian hell, but like not even a little is that what they are? Not even a little? Do they have anything to do with hell or
it's
heaven?
Called Hellraiser, Ben.
I kind of wonder why. Like,
because they're
who
raising
insisted on
hell? Because it sounds metal as fuck, Ben.
It does, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he calls it the Hellbound Heart, but in that, I think hell is more of like the metaphor for just like a place of like despair, like torture, not eternal life, etc., etc. But yeah, so anyway, the real ending, after the Cenobites are... Kirsty systematically uses the cube to send each of them back to hell.
She pushes it down and closes it. Except for Butterball, who has a house fall
Except for Butterball, who's smashed.
And then they're gonna escape, Ben, right? They're gonna open the front door and flee to freedom, right? Right?
Right.
And then the engineer is there, and they have a wacky who can get the cube first slap fight before she uses that to send him back as well.
Yeah. Which, like, did you think that puppet looked good? Because it doesn't. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. I know this is going to piss somebody off.
Well, it's
just
okay
doesn't.
to be wrong.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's not the real end. Like, the final end is we got to get rid of this fucking box.
Yeah, and how are we going to do that?
We're going to go to the dump.
Yep, which is just anywhere.
And we're going to start a garbage fire.
Perfect.
But is that a homeless man walking towards us? That guy that's appeared several times? He ate a bunch of grasshoppers?
For some reason, yeah. Yeah.
And then Steve was also there for some reason?
Yeah, Steve, she's like, Steve, we share in this trauma, right? And he's like, I'm just here to get laid, man. I don't even know.
So the
she's
guy,
like, Steve, are you
the
friends
homeless
with
guy,
my dad? Is that why we were meeting at that party? Because it seemed like I didn't know you, but like,
why does your dad know someone my age
party
as a friend?
This is just a little weird, Steve. But all right, what's going on with this homeless man?
The homeless guy comes up and he takes the cube out of the fire and he turns into a skeletal dragon and he flies away. And I have no more context for that than any of you do. And that was the point where, like, again, my wife and I have both seen the movie before, and we're just like, what the fuck? When did that... What? Neither of us remembered this fucking bone dragon flying away with the cube. So, yeah, that was I guess he's a part of it.
Who are you? I'm David Pumpkins, man!
Okay, yeah, and David Pumpkins is...
His own thing!
And the skeletons are part of it!
That's Hellraiser. So, movie or novel? I think you said the novel's better.
Yeah.
I agree.
Got him. Nope, just cut that part off. No. Don't say anything else. He agrees. I won.
I think you do win. Rewatching the movie, I definitely appreciated the novel a lot more. I think Hellraiser is one of those things that can too quickly fade into like a generic kind of pop culture memory where you just remember the best bits. Like, I remember every single one of Pinhead's lines. I could just quote them. But he's only on screen for 10 minutes.
You. Is that one of them?
I don't think so.
I'll be back.
No, getting further away. The look of the Cenobites, that all comes from the movie. The descriptions in the novel are super vague. And I do kind of stand by what I said in our episode on the Hellbound Heart, that without the movie, the Hellbound Heart would not be considered the classic it is considered to be. Hellraiser establishes the Cenobites. The Hellbound Heart does not. And, you know, there is a remake. I think it was a television series, Hellraiser, in like 2022. And I'm kind of interested to see that, because I know they went with a much more, I was going to say a much more androgynous Pinhead, to the extent that I don't actually know the gender of the actor playing it. I think it's a woman, but I could be wrong. Which is actually how Pinhead is described in the novel, and I'm kind of interested to see if they, with the freedom, relatively, I'm aware of the context in which I say that, Florida of our modern age.
I don't know why we keep picking on Florida.
Because it's objectively the worst state.
It really is. It's funny because...
And Alabama exists.
I was going to say, it's funny because it wasn't always like that my whole life. It was only a recent, I want to say, 4 years or so.
Ron DeSantis, real-life Cenobite. That's what they look like. And he eats pudding with his 2 fingers or whatever. He likes putting fingers in his mouth. That's a thing.
Does
yeah,
he?
No. What? Look up Google right now on air. Ron DeSantis pudding.
Oh God.
I want to hear your reaction to this in real time.
Let's see. Oh, come on! Don't edit out the pudding, Google. Oh, I don't like. Oh no! What? Pro-Trump ad attacks Ron DeSantis for pudding fingers story.
What the fuck kind of, like, I don't buy into any of that reptilian shit, but like that's what one would do.
Is this how humans eat pudding?
With their meat fingers?
Oh my God.
I'm not here to talk about Ron DeSantis, believe it or not. I'm here to talk about...
God, why did he do this?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Are you sending it to somebody? I don't know. I don't know how to end the episode now. Ron DeSantis ruined another one. His goddamn gross pudding fingers.
There's a picture that's photoshopped of him just covered in pudding.
Okay, so Nate is out of the game. I don't think he's coming back from this. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, check out the Hellbound Heart. Check out Hellraiser. They're both good. They both have problems. Together, they make a much better work than they do apart. This is one interesting case where I think a novel and an adaptation are just deeply tied together. So I recommend them both. I hope this was an exciting way to kick off Ben's Horror Bullshit Month. And I look forward to seeing you in the next ones, because we're covering, I believe next up is Goosebumps, Night of the Living Dummy. We went from like really adult humor to really childish humor. So let's see. And while Nate, I think, is still laughing at pudding images, I'm going to go ahead and thank our patrons who support this show at a frankly ridiculous level. Some of those patrons are James of If You Want the Gravy. He runs a movie blog. You should go check it out. It's very thorough. He actually just recently published a bunch of book reviews, so I think our community would be very interested in checking that out. You gotta check out Isekai Sensei Sama's podcast. That time I got reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcaster. You may hear a familiar voice from time to time. And we have Spooky Shy with a Y. Shy joined us to watch the movie. I will be putting that on the YouTube channel, so check that out. We also have Jamie Walker. Jamie Walker did not give me a project to plug because Jamie Walker does her own thing. And we also have John Bierce, of course. I'm sure he's pleased to be overlaid with all this pudding footage. John Bierce is an actual author of The Mage Errant and The Rack, and he's just sending me pudding memes. It's making it really hard to talk. The Rack and Mage Errant, he has his own Patreon where he does short stories. And I think that is all of our Yacht Plan tier patrons. I don't.
Join us next week when we do.
It's got so much pudding on.
Words About Pudding. It's our new podcast.
Is this an AI art of him and
I
pudding?
think it is.
Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah, join us next time when we talk about Night of the Living Dummy by R.L. Stine, who someone allowed to write children's books. It's a real trip checking that guy out as an adult. Yeah, look forward to that. Okay, bye.
Bye.